and send to students afterwards. Okay, so welcome to the employer panel, and we've got some questions today for the employers that have joined us, and we've got Mandy who is the International Director for the Chamber of Commerce. We've got Tom Gallimore, who is from Hotel Divan, the General Manager, and we've got Sue Smith from Cygnet Healthcare, who is the Apprenticeship Manager there. And I think at some point we should also be joined by John Angus from Switch Hospitality, and but I don't think he's in the room yet, but hopefully he'll join us later on. So the purpose of today's panel really is to get an understanding of what skills and attributes are required by our graduates, and how the employers here can give us some help, feedback and advice about how to make our graduates more employable. So my first question was really around what skills do you think are most in need at the moment within your industry? I don't know who wants to go first with that one.
I can go first with that one.
Fabulous, thanks very much.
So for me at the moment, I'm just making a few notes as I go, but I've written down flexibility, and in terms of hours and approach is the way I'd work it. So we haven't returned to normal yet, and I think you know, in an ideal world, if we recruited somebody as a bartender, they would be working behind the bar making cocktails as normal, but they've got to have a bit of a jack of all trades approach, because there's less people in the business because of COVID, but obviously also, you know, tightening of the teams and the obvious recruitment issues that I think we're all facing. So they need to have that sort of open-minded approach, that they wouldn't necessarily be doing jobs that would normally fit under their remit, and they have to be open to that sort of that change and that reactive as well as proactive approach. Ordinarily, we'd like to say, yeah, we'll get all the staff in and we'll get them trained in all aspects of their job, but there's a little bit of a, I don't want to say make it up as you go along, but you kind of almost have people who know what they're doing within departments, and then we just tag people on and get them to be assisting from behind and learning as they go a little bit more than we normally would do.
Great, thanks Tom, that's really helpful, and Mandy's got her hand up as well.
Yeah, for me, I think it's soft skills again. And in particular, I'd be looking for really good communication skills. That's really important. I'm International Director at the Greater Birmingham Chambers of Commerce, and so our role is predominantly about liaising with businesses to support businesses and have a voice for them. And communication skills are really important, as is having a really positive attitude and enthusiasm. So all of those overall, what you've just said, Tom, with flexibility as well, absolutely. But that real yearning for commitment and loyalty to you as well, because if you're going to invest in people, you want to make sure that they're going to stay with you for the journey too. So you're looking for all of that enthusiasm to do the job, real interest, love people that ask us questions as well as they're going along. But then we do have some roles too that are more detailed, and we do look for specific skills. And I think we'll probably go on to it later on in the conversation. But in particular, at the moment, what I'm looking for are business advisors. So for that, you do need to have credibility in what you're advising people and advising business. So I'll be looking in particular for people that have got experience in certain sectors, and it doesn't matter in which sectors or to what degree, because we can work on that, but I would be looking for particular sector specialists now. So yeah, but absolutely, Tom, I agree with you. It's all about those softer skills that we're looking for with the people that we're employing at the moment.
Yeah, thanks for that. So I think, yeah, so it's all about the attitude, isn't it? Attitude and having the right outlook on life is much more important. And it's actually one of the things that we do talk to many of the students about, and having that positivity. And suddenly it just brings a room to life, doesn't it, sometimes when people speak, and that just makes a real difference. Sue, you're on mute there, Sue.
looking at someone who muted me, especially when I was being unmuted, sorry. Yeah, I totally agree with what's been said. I would say in our sector, they're very similar. Obviously, we do shift patterns, we do night shifts. So that's, I think sometimes people don't do enough research into the business they're applying for. And I think because we are sort of a specialist niche within the healthcare sector and as in mental health, learning disability, people think that they can transfer that from perhaps doing social care or working in care homes and haven't got any concept of exactly what we're doing. We've had many people that turned up for interviews, and when you ask them pertinent questions, they really don't know anything about you at all. And I'd say that's a real put off for a lot of employers, where yes, we want you to work for us, but we do expect a level of understanding of the job role that you're going for, about the company. That to me shows keenness and determination in itself, that people do want to be bothered to look at you as an employer. It goes both ways. We've got the jobs, but you want to actually work for us. You know, and that's evidence to me that people have made that effort. They will actually go further in the interview. You know, I do think it is about that flexible customer service, soft skills type thing that we also need. People don't realise how important that is when you're working with patients. And it's often neglected part of, you know, how people perceive what we do. Customer service is probably the most important thing. If you're talking to somebody who's very distressed or isn't understanding what you're saying, and again, there's Mandy said communication skills are absolutely essential. Again, I think we don't always take people that have got experience, because sometimes you might have the right person but not have the experience, and that's where we would come into our own and actually training you to the standards and the levels that we want you to be at. So it's not always that you've got to have absolute experience in that area, but it does obviously significantly help if you do. We work in very acute and prison-led services, so sometimes you are dealing with some very challenging behaviours, and people need to understand that about our particular business, but it's not all, you know, little old ladies wanting a cup of tea. You know, we are very much a challenging end of the care spectrum, and people making the effort to ring the service, ask them about it, get contacts, names of people that work there is really important. You know, arrange to have an orientation visit if you're interested in working for us. That's absolutely essential. Taking the initiative is also important, I think, from my part. You know, seeing people actually trying their best to become one of our employees rather than just going to an interview and not really having any interest.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sue. And I think initiative's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because often that comes with a bit of confidence. And during the life cycle of a student coming into us from level 4 up to level 6, for instance, you can actually see how they grow in confidence, and how we like then to adapt our assignments as that time goes forward, so that when they're starting at level 4, we want them to try things, we want them to make mistakes, we want them to get things wrong, so they learn from them. So by the time they get to level 6, they're actually starting to be more confident and show that they can think outside the box and have more initiative. So I think that is a really good point. Thank you. I think John's joined us now. John Angus, are you here?
Yes, I am. Sorry.
Hi, John. Nice to see you. Thanks very much for spending some time with us today.
Hi, everybody.
We were just having a chat about within your particular sector, what you consider to be the most important skills. So I don't know if there's anything you want to add to what's already been said. Are you on silent there, John?
Apologies, I tried to move my screen and it just happened to fall apart on me. So very, very good. Technical IT difficulties, don't you just love it? We've had them for a year now and still can't get them right.
No problem. We've all been struggling at times, and I think one of the favourite sayings of the year is "You're on silent."
Yeah, you're on mute. You're talking to yourself, which is fairly normal, to be fair. I think sure. I think in our world, sort of hotel world, it's about, I think I probably concur with what the other people on the panel were saying. The crucial thing is to understand actually where you're going. So actually, when you go for an interview, it's being able to understand the business that you're going into, what it does, and understand the job that you're coming for. I think, sometimes, particularly the young students of the world, they don't quite have the ability to fully express themselves enough. And I think that's the bit that says, well, look, practice an interview, understand the type of questions that you're going to be asked. I mean, my son's just finished school and started in our industry, and, we coached him about understanding about the actual hotel that he was going for interview in, understanding the the ethos of the hotel, its awards, actually what it was, so that actually when he was asked the questions, he understood the answers, and fortunately got the job. So it is a lot about being able to understand and not be frightened to ask questions. I mean, I have to say, I've been, some of the, you know, all of us, if we all counted the number of interviews that we've all done in our life, I'm sure it would be quite a lot. But the ones that really stand out to me are the interviews that ask me what I can do for them and what my company can do for them, you know, as opposed to it being actually a one-way street. I think that the people who come along and say, well, look, I've got something to bring to you as well as you've got something to bring to me, tends to be the people that you've ever, well, certainly me, you've ever quickly switch on to that because they have an inner self-confidence. And I tend to find that students sometimes actually lack that self-confidence. And I think it's key that when they're sitting in front of you, you know, if you've got someone that's 20, 21, being interviewed by someone who's probably double the age, they just need to make sure that they're not frightened of that age gap and that they've got the confidence in themselves to actually express themselves.
That's great. Thanks very much for that, John. And that in a way has led me on to another question, which we've got a couple of hands up, but just to let you know what the next question is that's coming up, to have some thinking time. One of the questions I had is, what is the best question that you have been asked at an interview? So we'll come back to that one in a second. The first person with their hand up was Ricky.
Hi, Tom, Sue, Mandy and John. Thanks for joining us today. Sorry the students are not here. They're obviously enjoying the sunshine. My name is Ricky. I'm a lecturer in tourism and aviation and also hospitality. And as we're approaching the summer now, we're going to need to do a lot of reading to make sure that our teaching next academic year is very much contemporary and it's also very much up to date. So I was just wondering, just if I could pick your brains, do you think there is any current trends or any updates from your industries that you think that we should be teaching next academic year that you've come across so that our students are very much up to date when they leave UCB?
I think the biggest change that we found in our industry that I think everyone has is the importance of mental health. And I think that, I mean, as an example, my people director is just, so, you know, my people director was a mental health first aider, but that particularly wasn't actually enough for us. So she's now gone on a course to become a mental health trainer so that we can then have all of our managers trained. Whereas pre-pandemic, having your HR department taking care of mental health was probably okay. But I think now all of your managers, all of your recruiters need to really understand mental health. So I suggest that that's the principal change, certainly in my business. And the second principal change in my business is versatility. And I think that that's not going to go back. So I think the fact that we have hotels now where people are trained to do 3-4 jobs. I think the attitude of, that's not my job, I only want to do reception, I only want to do concierge, I only want to do this, that's not going to work anymore because those roles are being phased out in lots of hotels. And you know, front desk are doing concierge, they're doing check-in, they're doing sort of reservations. And I mean, I'm back open actually in my hotel. I've probably got 30% less people in my business doing the same jobs of pre-COVID, which is because of the efficiency and the moving people around. So they're the two key things: flexibility to be able to do more than one job, and actual mental health.
Fabulous. Thanks for that, John. Anne and Lewis, I know you've got your hands up, but if they're different questions, are you okay if I come back to you in a moment? Because Mandy's got her hand up now, which I'm presuming is to answer this question. Is that okay?
Yeah, I think just what John's just said there about versatility, I think it's about saying to the students that this is all part of their development, and actually it makes them an all-rounded, more valuable person going forward, rather than being pigeonholed into reception or concierge or behind the bar. You know, the more that you can add to all of your knowledge about the whole place that you're working at, and working with all those different people, it's just going to enhance you as a person going forward and make you more attractive to employers. So for me, absolutely what John has said there. And yeah, I'll hand back to you, Rachel.
Thanks very much for that, Mandy. Thank you. So I think the next person that had their hand up was Anne. Was it a different question you wanted to ask, Anne?
No, it was more to, yeah, slightly. It was probably following on from what John and Mandy were just saying. We often hear about, we're living probably even more so now than ever in this VUCA world, this volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world. And actually we need graduates to be able to respond to unpredictable change. And there's been no more unpredictable change than over the last 12 months. And I think our students in particular have really risen to the challenge and have had to deal with so much change. You know, are they on campus, are they in, are they out? I wonder how industry might, sort of your industries might respond to that in terms of bringing that, you know, so students perhaps that don't have experience in some areas, how that their experience of the pandemic can demonstrate their ability to respond to sort of that VUCA environment. I don't know whether you've got any thoughts on that.
Thanks, Anne. I think your microphone just kept cutting out there a little bit, so I think we only got parts of the question. But I think it was to do with the fact that our students, obviously, in the last 18 months, have had quite an experience of doing the hokey cokey, being in and out and all over the place, and how that experience really is going to then help them to adapt to work in your organisation. Is that right, Anne?
Yeah, and that, you know, that whole volatile, you know, that it's unpredictable. I mean, John was just saying, you know, that, you know, people, those roles have gone, people are being expected to, you know, be very flexible. And I suppose, you know, how can graduates prepare themselves for answering questions around that to demonstrate, because they may not necessarily have the employment experience, but they can use their experience from how they responded in their study and through the pandemic. I think that's presented them with a lot of challenges because they maybe haven't been able to get the experience because they haven't got the part-time jobs because the industries have been on furlough or closed.
I think that's a very good point, and I think you probably have answered it, which is that, I mean, a good example, we are at Park Regis, our structure, we were looking for a social media manager to come and work for us, and our marketing director was interviewing, and she met a young lady who'd graduated but couldn't find a job for about 9 months, so had no practical experience. But during that 9-month period, she had gone off and built a personal website, taken on actually photography, and she had a whole portfolio of stuff that she had done by herself. So the fact that she hadn't actually worked for 9 months, in a normal world, she would say, well, I'm not going to employ you, I haven't worked for 9 months. But actually for 9 months, she's battered out a website, etc., and she joined our team. She's absolutely fantastic. So I think for the students, it's about, well, look, I couldn't find a job, but actually what I did instead was I found another way to learn. I found another way to do this. And if you can show the versatility, you know, the last 12 to 15 months, and I'm sure Tom will back me up on this, but the last 10 to 15 months, we've had to think about stuff that we've never thought about actually before. And the best people in our businesses are the ones who didn't just put the head in the sand and say, oh no, I'm sorry, it's got to be done this way. It's the ones who found another way to learn, found another way to do business, decided that they would go and analyze stuff and just see, well, actually, does that make sense? I mean, you know, so the best businesses, the best of us now, you know, if you can sit here right now as a business and say, do you know what, I'm stronger than I was pre-COVID, and I don't think there's many of them, but if you can say you're stronger than you were pre-COVID, then that means you've done all those things. And I think the students are, what did you do differently? How did you learn differently? And did you come to the same conclusion? And if you did, actually, were you more efficient? And will you keep on doing that? So did you used to travel actually an hour in for lessons and an hour back and only do actually 2 hours? And did you find another way of doing it? Did it make you actually more efficient? and actually, you know, I could do it on my phone, and I found another way, and I still got the same. That sort of stuff is exactly actually what I want to hear.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. That's great. And Mandy, you've got your hand up, I think, about this question too.
Yeah, I think it's about being innovative, as John just said. You know, you've got to really you have to think outside the box. And I think it's important that students don't disregard what they are doing outside of the working environment, because all of it enhances their characters, personalities, and it's all adding experience. And they mustn't forget that, because it is easy to do when you're in an interview or you're applying for a role and you're just focused on that job related experience, in your opinion. But of course, the person on the other side is actually looking at you as a person and how you're going to fit into their organisation, how you're going to be able to develop and come with those great new ideas, however small they might feel to that person that's applying for the role. So it's about really being confident. And I know that's difficult for some people, and it comes sometimes with experience, but to really try to think of all of the things that they've done, write them down if they need to, go back over the last year, think of all the real positives. And as John just said, you know, how did you come around them? Were you more efficient? How have you made that change? And that's what the person over the table or the screen is wanting to hear from them.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mandy. That does make perfect sense, doesn't it? It's about looking at those opportunities and what's available out there. And I know in the first lockdown period, and I was used to travelling to London twice a week, and so I'd suddenly got about 9 or 10 hours back in my week that I wasn't used to having. So I signed up for a copywriting course, and I really enjoyed it. And so when someone says to me, "What did you do?" I'll say, "Well, I learned how to write copy." So it was very useful. Next person with a hand up is Tom.
And it's really just echoing what the other two guys have said. I think I would want everyone to have a positive outlook and really focus on what they have done rather than what they haven't. I think we've all been locked down for 12 months, so it's not an isolated case for them and them alone. And I think they really should just bring to the table what they've achieved. It doesn't really matter what it is, but it's almost how they sell that. I still think we're a people industry, and experience is part of the battle. It's not the biggest factor in a lot of senses. And again, if you factor in that need for flexibility, in some senses, if people are open-minded, I'd prefer to take someone with limited experience but with an open approach than someone who was sort of pre-pandemic mindset. So really, yeah, get them to hone in on what they have achieved and to come across positively and proudly, I think.
I think that's great, Tom, and I think you said two things in there which I'm just going to draw out, which is a great concept of a pre-pandemic mindset, and I've not heard that before, but actually does make perfect sense, and is one of the things that I'm going to take away from today. And the other thing is focus on what you have done, not what you haven't done. And I think we've all sat through interviews where someone has been asked a question and they've struck off on a really negative note by saying how they haven't done it or haven't got the experience, but they've done something else. Whereas if they turn that round, it could have been a real positive. So yeah, that's a great takeaway. Thank you. Over to Susan.
Can I find that mute button? Yeah, I'm sort of echoing what Tom said as well. You know, it is about them understanding how far they've travelled and how far we've all travelled in the pandemic. But also looking outside the box if they do want to get experiences maybe that aren't the way they wanted to go in the interim. You know, we often find people come to us into the healthcare as a stopgap, you know, and end up staying. They invariably will be graduates in more cases, and you know, we have a lot of art students, we have a lot of psychologists that have gone in to do nursing because they can't get into psychology, for example. It's about looking outside the box, I think, in what you want and where you want to go and what experiences you can gain while you're waiting for that dream role. Because people, you know, we all have vacancies, everybody's got vacancies that would really benefit from new, fresh people coming in who hadn't even thought of a career with us. And learning from them and what they bring for their overview of our services, even if they don't stay, you're still learning something from somebody who may be trained as a chef and ends up working as a care worker because he's not been able to get anything, or a bar job because he's not been able to get anything lately. And we're sort of benefiting from that, I guess, is whereas the traditional trades are disappearing because of the variety of pandemic issues, we're reaping the benefits of people come to work for us that would never have considered coming to us before. And if they don't stay, they've gained that experience while they're with us of mental health, challenge behaviours, all the things that we excel in managing. They can see how they can then apply that in their own workplace. So if they do go back to working in a restaurant or a bar and they have stroppy customers, they've learnt some skills on how to apply that communication, that way of dealing with the issue, maybe differently while they've been with us. So I think it's about looking outside the box as well as where they want to go with their employment and taking some chances elsewhere to learn new skills, even if they don't feel they'll ever use them later on in life, and that's not really what they want. It's worth a shot. We do keep a lot of people with us that never thought they'd work with us before, never thought of mental health as a place to work, and have come for, I'll do it for a year. 15 years later, I'm putting them through a nursing course, you know, and they start as a support worker in a complete different trade, for example. So, you know, I think the pandemic's done us some favours, and I think it's got its bad things, absolutely. It's got a lot to offer as well. And I think, as you say, also we've all learned to adapt and find the new world that we live in. And we can either reap the benefits of it or we don't, you know, and it is about being sensible to the opportunities that are available to you.
Thanks, Sue. That's great. Yeah, and some good takeaways there as well for our students in terms of, you know, don't think of these stopgap jobs as a waste of time. Actually, you know, think about what you have got out of it and maximise the opportunities while you're there for your transferable skills. So really valuable advice. Thank you. So that takes us back to the question I asked before this section, which was, can you think of the best question that an interview candidate has asked you in an interview situation? And also I'd like to say that we have got a few students that have joined us now, not huge amounts, but a few of them that are in there. So I think that thanks very much for joining us today, and you've joined us for an employer chat where we're just talking about employability skills. And if you have a question for any of the employers here today, just pop your hand up and I can come to you afterwards. But for now, let's go back to the best interview questions. And Sue, I think your hand's up still. Is it always up from still before? Tom, you've got your hand up.
The best question, I think this is kind of echoing what John said. A company I used to work for had an approach of what's in it for me, which was something that they pushed the employees to ask. And really it was, how are you going to develop me? As in, what, you know, it's great that you know, I'm selling myself to you, but what am I getting in return? And I think it puts you not on the back foot, but it makes you explain the company. I sometimes tend to use interviews as a sales pitch anyway to get people to want to work in the company. But I think we had to go away after that and really write down what we did for them, and then know that we had something solid to sell people rather than just what we were expecting to get from them.
Yeah, it's a good point, isn't it? It's a two-way relationship, isn't it? And both people, to, you know, in order to get the most out of it, they both need to be contributing. So in terms of the employer and the employee, it's a really good starting point for that relationship, isn't it? Mandy.
I can't come up with any real gems for you this afternoon, Rachel. And what that says to me is that I don't think people really take that opportunity at the end of an interview. I've interviewed for many, many years. I've done interviews for British Airways and all sorts of different businesses. And you get to the end of that interview and they're either feeling like, I've got through it now, this is my turn and I just want to get out of here, or they just don't put the effort and time into thinking about what they want to ask. I think for me, the questions that I've always enjoyed answering for people at the end of an interview is when they start to ask me about the team. What would the team be like that I'd be working with? You know, that shows me that they've then thought about their day-to-day work and who would they be with, and they want to learn more about that. And then also when they start to ask about the social aspect of the job, you know, what do people do socially? Do they do anything? Is there anything I can get involved in that's not necessarily, you know, the day job? Do we support any charities or anything like that? Do we have any activities or events? Because to me, those types of questions they might have done a bit of homework as well, on the company. And I always like, and we've already mentioned that, I think Sue, you said earlier, when people have done their research, and if they come up with something that proves that research, I really enjoy answering those. So I'm sorry I can't come up with any classics, but I think it's just please take the opportunity to ask those questions.
Yeah, thanks for that, Mandy. And like I say, I did put you all on the spot there, but I think your answer was great, because it actually is really good advice. And this is about preparing, isn't it? Preparing and thinking and putting yourself in someone else's shoes and saying, what do you want to get out of this? And one of the questions that I did be asked once is how can I help you do your job? You know, what can I do for you? And I think that, you know, as someone coming in and being interviewed, and like you say, they've got to the end, they're feeling a little bit relieved that they've got to the end of the interview and they've answered all the questions. But then to come back with something like that, which is thought-provoking, it shows a sign, doesn't it? It gives you an indication that this person's put some thought into what they want to ask. And I do think that is really valuable. John.
Yeah, I think you know, the guys covered it, but I think that part of I always find a good interview is when I've actually talked less than the candidate, and that's actually quite rare. So it's about the candidate taking the opportunity to talk. And I think the asking questions, you know, what's the CSR policy? What do you do about carbon reduction? You know, as you said before, what's the various benefits, etc., etc. But I think some of the really engaging interviews I've had is when people ask about me. You know, actually, what was my career path? Actually, what did I do? How did I get to the position I'm in? And I think, fine, it's nice to talk about actually yourself, but I think what it does is it makes the interview actually more engaging and more two-way, as opposed to it being a sort of one-way conversation. And I think too many people allow the interviewer to just take charge, go through a process. I always have to say I hate when an interviewer turns up with a whole pile of preset questions and then spends 5 minutes writing the answer out. It just becomes really clinical. And I think you have to try and make the interview a two-way conversation where you both come out of it and you think, you know, I actually gained something out of that. I've been sitting here for an hour and a half and I've actually gained something out of it, as opposed to I've gone through a process, I've written down, I mean, why do you have to write down the answers? You know, I mean, I don't get that. But anyway, that's a different point. But I think students should not feel frightened to ask questions, because, as Tom said, every time I interview someone, I make it very clear it's a partnership. You have to want to work actually for us. If you don't want to sort of work for us and you're just coming to us because you don't have a job, then don't come, because you ain't going to do very well. You have to really want to work for us. You have to understand our culture and mentality, because actually when you join our team will expect you to actually know that. So feel free to come and ask questions, show confidence, keep the person sitting there until they've answered you, and, you know, engage. So, you know, it's crucial.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. And I agree completely. It should be more conversation led, shouldn't it? And it should be very much around that two-way interaction. And when you're having a natural conversation with somebody, you tend to ask questions and then they reply to them and then ask you a question. But when it's an interview situation, the questions are only flowing one way, so it does tend to make it more awkward. Of course, for students to get as far as, I should say our graduates to get as far as the interview stage, they have to have been through a shortlisting process. Looking around the room today, a number of my team are here who have had some pretty hefty shortlisting jobs to do recently, where we've had a lot of applications for jobs. And I think the most I've ever had to shortlist for a job was for one of the roles in London, where I had 103 applications. But I'm sure there's situations that you can talk about today where you've had many more than that. And when you get the applications and your shortlisting, what are you looking for? You know, what do you say, actually this person is perfect, or what turns you off completely, even if they've got great experience? What would make you say, no, this person's not right for me? Sue.
The I have with application shortlisting is if there are required things that we absolutely need to be sent in, that they're sent in. It might be an ID badge, it might be a certificate, it might be a reference, it might be whatever it might be, is to get it all in a row, get it done, get it together and send it as one. and make sure that you've checked everything off that list. Because I haven't got the time to be chasing you for those essential documents. And it's one of the main reasons that I take people off an interview list, is those simple things that aren't being done shows a lack of organisation and commitment straight away. Read what you're asked to do, get everything together, make sure you've got it, and send it in as one big block so that it's there, and you will automatically be put forward to the next stage if you come to me for an interview. It's those silly little things that really mean a lot to me personally when I'm interviewing, because I could spend an extraordinary amount of time chasing a variety of people for those documents, where I could be doing something far more effective to support those that are actually applying and interested. So, you know, get your ducks in a row. I hate that saying, but hey, how it works. Get your ducks in a row, make sure that you've got everything, and get it in quick, get it done, do it nicely, have it laid out well. Not, you know, check your grammar. I know it's a simple thing, check your grammar, make sure that it looks good, and get it in. At least you're part of the way there in my book. And again, depends on the application, because of some of our applications, you do have to put personal statements in there, you have to do reflective practice on there. So again, those will enhance what I'm seeing in relation to the responses that are coming in, with all the documents in place, and all the references. It should all match up as one. Obviously, we're probably more intense than some of the businesses in relation to doing reflective practices and such like, but obviously we care, so it makes sense. But that entry point is so important to us as a business. Get it right first time, make it look good, pay attention to the detail that's been asked of you, and at least you're going to be heading in the right direction. Otherwise, it's a no-brainer. You're going to be off straight away from my book. I'm really sorry, but you know, we have hundreds of people apply for our posts, and hundreds apply for our apprenticeships. So we have to be brutal sometimes, and it will be the best of the best that gets through.
Yeah, thanks for that. So there's some really good takeaways there, aren't there, for our graduates? And I think it's, you know, for me, it's around, like you say, it's the attention to detail and the little things that matter. So it's the grammar, the punctuation, making it look professional, making sure everything's completed accurately, making sure you've read all of the forms and the required information, so you've sent everything. Because, you know, you're falling down at the first hurdle otherwise, aren't you? You're not even getting as far as somebody evaluating your skills and expertise. All you're doing is just turning people off straight away. So that's a really good point. And Tom, I think you had your hand up next.
I did, but it was just going to be to echo what Suzanne had said. Really, if you've got hundreds of applications, it's a very short window, maybe 10 or 20 seconds, which sounds ridiculously short, but you either get a feeling for it or you don't. And I think the visual of a CV needs to be interesting. You know, if you're just going to read words on a page, I know that's what all CVs are, but there has to be something more to it. And I think just a pet hate, it's attention to detail. It's a CV, it's a pre-formatted document, so get someone to read it if you're not confident. You know, and possibly I think everyone should probably get their CVs checked, you know, by someone else, just for a different perspective of how it reads. But yeah, definitely, you know, when you've got lots of people applying for a role, you don't spend 10 minutes on it. Other thing would be, the CV is meant to be fairly brief. When people start sending me 10-page CVs, I'll turn off after a certain while. Like, so I want it to tell me key achievements, not war and peace of your life. So just short and snappy, to the point, but you know, visually not necessarily impressive, but something that captures your attention.
Yeah, thanks. And again, some takeaways from that. So it's so you don't get a second chance to make a first impression, there's that saying, isn't there? And if you're flicking through and you see something that's scruffy or not completed, you don't even give it the attention, you know, that it might deserve from a content point of view, because it's literally not of interest. So that's a really good one. And I think the length of CVs as well, and people that don't contextualize their CV to the actual role. So essentially they give you their whole life history, you know, in 10 pages, rather than saying, okay, for this role, these 4 things were really important, and these are the 4 that I'm going to focus on. And admittedly, for graduates, it's often the other way around, where they feel that they don't have enough to put into a CV. But going back to what we were saying earlier about think about what you have done, not what you haven't done, and think about, you know, how that relates to your role is a really good point. John, you had your hand up next.
Yeah, I think it's probably very similar, but I think you've got to try to make sure there's no gaps. So if there's a gap in time where you haven't done anything, I think if you put forward the CV, you got to think to yourself, if you read that CV, does it make the person who doesn't know you ask a question? Because if it makes you ask a question and you're shortlisting, it's going in the bin. Simple as that. So you got to think to yourself, does my CV show me in the best light? It's almost like an advertisement. Does it show me in the best possible light? I'm constantly actually surprised by people who just keep on sending the same CV. They don't actually amend it to the job role, as you just said there, Rachel. I think that, the first job or the first piece of experience generally in my world, is the most important. So what you put down as your first role or your first relevant piece of experience and your key highlights actually from that's the first thing actually we read. And if that is actually generic, and also in our world, it's about actual measurability. If you put down you worked X, Y, and Z, or you were at college and you achieved X, Y, and Z, well, you have to make it fairly specific. If you put down a bullet point that says I did X, Y, and Z, well, actually, what does that actually mean to me? Whereas I worked in a restaurant and I achieved a 10% increase in average spend, or I was employee of the month 4 times, or I went out of my way and learned how to work on reception, or I did this and did that. And no level of experience from a graduate is something that should be discounted. So you should get it down there. But I also think the advice I'd give to graduates who are trying to come into our world is the quality of your, I know that's not easy right now, but the quality of part-time jobs, quality of summer jobs. It's very interesting when you read graduate CVs who want to come into our industry and whose past experience in part-time jobs has no relevance at all to the industry. There's almost no point. I was very careful. I did 3 summers, and in those 3 summers, I geared my 3 summers to being, one was a certain role, the second one was another role, and the other one was another role. And then when you then came into the market actually looking for a management, actual traineeship, my CV had my qualification, but I also had food and beverage experience, actual front office experience internationally. So if you're shortlisting, you almost want to be excited actually by the CV. You want to see on it that, yes, look, this person really has thought about it, as opposed to a blanket, gaps, not enough information. So I think it's very important that people look at it.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. And good advice there around thinking about the different experience that you're going to get. So if you've got 3 summer gaps, take your opportunities to get some experience in wider fields. That's a really good piece of advice. Over to Mandy.
I think read the question, absolutely what Sue said, because in my current organisation at the Chamber, but also my previous role, head of terminal facilities at Birmingham Airport, and did lots of interviewing there. If it is an online application form, then do an online application form and fill it out, and don't just send your CV because it's not going to be looked at. So read what they're asking for. And then what really used to upset me, because I think, well, you haven't given yourself the best opportunities, when on an online application form you see that people have copied and pasted into the different boxes the same information because they think it just covers it. But to me, it was just a lack of real care and enthusiasm for the role that they're going for. And then the other side was when I used to just see 1 or 2 sentences in a box, and then the rest of the box is empty. And I just really feel for them. I don't care if that 1 or 2 sentences is amazing. There's a space there. Try and put down as much as possible that, is going to sell you to that person, because we're going through a sifting process here. And I think finally, with all the various roles that I've interviewed for over the years now, I would always offer a job description and a person spec. And on there, as John's just said, with the CV, tailor the CV to the role that you're going to, because when you're sending out that job description and person spec, people are doing it for a reason. You know, you can look down all of the criteria there and you can think, okay, how can I adapt the skills and experience I've got to that person spec, to that job description, and let me get that down, because we're going to be going through those forms and we're going to be looking for those keywords as well. So that's really important. Read what the employer is sending you.
Absolutely. So yeah, look for the clues, and the answer's often there. It's just about looking and reading between the lines. So yeah, absolutely good piece of advice there, Mandy. Thank you. Anne.
Yeah, thanks. I'm so interested and excited by things that people are saying. I've just put something on Twitter. I haven't taken a photograph of you all, so I didn't ask you. I've used something else, but the comments are just brilliant in terms of you know, the insights, and it's just got me thinking about you know, we ask for people to submit you know, CVs and specs, and in education we get students to think about inclusivity and presenting things in different formats, so doing, you know, infographics, audio, you know, and I sometimes wonder, and I do this myself in terms of shortlisting, if we were to ask people to send in something different than a CV, and I know that happens in some industries, but, you know, particularly where you're looking at front of house and people being able to, you know, present themselves in a certain way, work with different clients, how would you feel if somebody came up with something that you think, actually, I haven't asked for this, but this is actually really quite different? You know, is it a gamble to do that? Is it something that, you know, is a no-no? Just thought I'd put that out there.
Yeah, thanks for that, Anne. That's a really great question, and I think that with many of our students at the moment, and obviously, you know, we're going out of our way to make sure our students have got a really wide range of skills in, you know, in audio, video production, in different kinds of formats. So the idea of a student submitting a video CV could be really good. Mandy, you've got your hand up first.
I think with my current organisation, what we say is fill the form out, and you can attach other supplementary information. So yeah, we would love to see that. I personally would love to see that.
Thanks, Mandy. And next person is Tom.
Yeah, we went through a stage of trialing something directly before the pandemic, where we encourage people to do 15 to 30-second videos as part of the application process, because you could get more from it. I mean, to me, a CV is in quite similar to a degree. It's a foot in the door. Your personality is always going to be what takes you through. So if your CV makes me look at it, then great. And you know, it doesn't really matter how that happens. If it was a video, if it had loads of pie charts or whatever it was on it, if it's interesting, I'll look at it, and then that probably means I'm going to give them a call. At that point, it looks like it's the same as the degree. It's a foot in the door, and then they have to sell themselves and come across well at an interview. So I would absolutely be for it. I suppose as long as the information on there isn't drowned out by graphics, that would be my only thing. They still have to make sure they get the point across. It's not a magazine. You know, I still want to know about them more than I do about the pie chart. That would be my only sort of caveat. And
out of interest, what kind of submissions did you get? So when people were putting their 15-minute, 30-minute videos over to you, what was the kind of quality like and the standard like? So it's a bit, I suppose it's a bit like putting an advert of yourself out, isn't it?
They were, say, 15 to 30 seconds, not minutes. So literally, it's very much a first impression. And we had somebody who sent a video in of just like a headshot, and they had Post-it notes all the way around the head. Of just like, you know, fun, interactive, whatever. And we give them a call straight away, because it's a bit outside the box, even though it's not necessarily got anything to do with the job spec. So it's a way of getting a personality in across in a way that a CV just wouldn't. So we really liked it, and it was something we were trialing. It just kind of fallen off the bandwagon a little bit because of what's gone on. So I'm sure it's something that at group level we'll pick back up. But yeah, I think it was very interesting for sure, and more in line with the, I make myself sound old here, but the TikTok generation. You know, because that's something I'm not that old, but I'm definitely not a social media person particularly. So
can identify with that.
Yeah, it's something that will show the best of them, because it's something they understand.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that all makes perfect sense, Tom. And I think that I'm actually really liking the idea of having a video application form as opposed to having to sift through 130 CVs. It sounds quite appealing at the moment. John.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I just got to make sure you get the basics right first to go with it. But yeah, I agree. I think any individuality is welcomed. It's going to make you stand out, but just make sure you get the basics right to go as you put it in. But yeah, definitely, I'd be happy to see a video. I'd happy to see a handwritten. I think as well, I'm amazed the amount of times that people apply for jobs and don't get the name of the person that they're applying to. Dear sir, dear madam, is just not getting past the first line. Doesn't take, you could phone our reception desk and ask the name of our HR manager tomorrow. You could get the name on LinkedIn. You could get the name anywhere you like. I think the basics are key as well before you start getting too excited. Make sure you find the person you're writing to, understand how to spell the name, and get the grammar right, and then get that process in play.
Thanks very much for that, John. That's great. I've got plenty more questions up my sleeve, but I think are the panel got any more questions that they would like to ask today? And I think we'll probably take two more questions and call it a day at that point, because there's been some real gems today, and I'm sure our graduates are going to really enjoy watching the video afterwards. No more questions from the floor, so I can get one out of my secret bag then. I think the next question I'd like to ask is around advertising for jobs and promoting jobs. And so if our graduates want to be aware of what's happening in your industry and what jobs there are, where would be the best place for them to find out about them and look?
As far as Hotel Divan and Malmaison are concerned, and possibly hotels, obviously directly on the hotel page. I think LinkedIn massively can be used now for job searches, but I wouldn't apply through LinkedIn necessarily. I think you maybe revert back and use it almost as like a third party sort of a website to look and then apply direct. I think we get a lot still through things like word of mouth. So I know a lot with cocktail bartenders as an example. They're quite a close-knit community within the city. So there's Facebook groups set up for cocktail or mixologists, and a lot of jobs and things are put on there because they're people who are looking for like-minded people. So I think they just need to be flexible. I don't think that Coucher.com doesn't work, but I don't think if they just solely look at Coucher.com, they're going to necessarily find the results they want to. So a flexible approach would be good, but all social media I think is useful. If people are looking for jobs, it's an easy way for us to reach out to people and say we're looking for somebody, but just respond back to the company directly.
Thank you. Mandy.
Similar to Tom, really. We post on LinkedIn, we post on our own site, and we post our jobs on Twitter. And we hope to then, attract as many as possible. But we are, as an organisation, looking at that as well, because one of your questions prior to today was about, the challenges that we're facing with recruitment as well. And in particular, right now, I've got a role that's out, which is quite niche. It's a business advisory role in innovation, and I'm really struggling to fill that. So I think the channels that we're currently taking for that particular role are not working as successfully as I would like. We're not attracting the numbers that I would like. So we are having to have a look at what is, the right approach for the role that we have out. So if it was like a marketing type of role, then we would go down a different route. We'd probably stick with the Twitter and LinkedIn. But when we're talking about more specific roles, then we're having to look at different ways of doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is about context, isn't it, sometimes, and different channels being suited to different people and different jobs. So yeah, thanks for that. Sue.
I mean, much the same as everybody else. We have, I would say the best place to go is to our website. There is currently something like 480 jobs nationally on our website and 103 in the Midlands. We use LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook an awful lot for not just advertising the jobs, but things that are going on within the services. So if people are interested in looking at us as a business to come to, there's plenty of information about the national initiatives that are going on within the business in relation to patient care, what's happening, various events that we do. You can get a really good feel, I think, from all of those as to who we are. We do use, Read and Total Jobs and all of those, but I think the better place is to go into the main website, because you're more likely to get in contact then with the recruitment team, who are skilled at knowing what we're looking for, and can almost straight away give you an interview and get that bit done over the phone before they pass you on as suitable to someone who's going to be actually interviewing for the job, so they can do the sort of verbal screening that we do as a business, as a pre-interview step. Certainly when I joined the company, I was interviewed by two of my team, having found a job online, and then I was invited to come and work for 3 days with the company to see if I liked them, rather than the other way around. They were obviously keen that they liked me, so it was down for me to decide if I liked them, and they paid me when I started for those 3 days work. And I was hooked, line and sinker to that point, really, because I felt that I was part of the team and I only worked for them, so it was a real selling point for me. But yeah, I think really the company website is far better than some of the online job market sites that you have out there, because you will speak to somebody that's linked to the company direct, who will know all about the job you're applying for, because they'll have actually advertised it anyway. So I think, yeah, for me, that's the best advice, is look at those. But again, look at your research first as well before you apply. Make sure you get the info.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sue. So that's a really good point, isn't it, for our graduates? Is you might want to use the affiliate sites that have like a combination of different jobs mashed up on them, like the Total Jobs. But actually, once you've found the jobs, then go to the company and do some research and apply through the company direct, as opposed to going through the affiliate, because it just becomes much more personal then, doesn't it? And takes you away from the idea that you're just sort of throwing out a CV into the middle of nowhere, and no one's really picking it up or taking that interest. So thank you. Rob?
Yeah, if there's time for one more question, simple question. What should a candidate not wear as an interview?
Can I just answer the previous one first? I just got a point on it, Rachel. Is that possible? And then we
of course you
answer.
can. Yeah, no problem. I'll come back to John.
I think I've got a slightly different view on applications that I would suggest that might be worthwhile picking up, which is that, I would suggest that if it was me, I'd be teaching the students about taking their destiny in their own hands. And I think the way that you do that is you don't just blanket go and actually apply on people's websites. I think that I'd be teaching people how to use LinkedIn, how to get contacts, understand who the actual recruitment directors are in these businesses, and I would be going direct actually whether they have a vacancy or not, and I'd be using every contact I possibly could. Does my brother know my cousin, and does my cousin know my uncle, and if my uncle knows a manager of the hotel, then write to them. And I would use every single avenue that I could, because if you're just blanket making the application, then you're making the application the same as 50 other people. I mean, I worked up in the Midlands when I was training as a deputy manager, and it was almost impossible to get into London. And I sat in the old days and typed 350 letters individually to each hotel manager, and I posted them all off in the old-fashioned days. And I got offered 3 jobs within a week, and nobody was advertising. But because I took the bull by the horns and I made the approach and I sent actually my details. So I would be saying, don't just wait to try to find an application. Take the bull by the horns. Actually apply if there's no vacancy, because actually lots of us have silent vacancies that we don't actually advertise. And I think that people forget that there are vacancies out there that we're dealing with. We're looking at different stuff. It's not on the website. So get out there and expend it.
Great advice. Absolutely, yeah. Thanks for that, John. And I think you're right. I think this is about being proactive again, isn't it? Going back to what we said earlier about the students' attributes, and so the advice there is don't always just wait for a vacancy to arise. If you find a company that you really want to work for, approach them, contact them through LinkedIn, email them, speak to them, walk in the door and speak to people. And sometimes you do have to be a little bit pushy and a little bit forceful, and sometimes it pays off. So yeah, thanks very much for that, John. That's a great point.
You just have to realise as well. Sorry, you just have to realise as well that don't worry about it if 200 people don't get back to you. What's the damage? It's not going to do you any damage at all. You only need sort of one to land. But nowadays, actually, LinkedIn in particular is the most fantastic way to find out everybody's contact, from the chief executive to the HR assistant. You just literally go in, you flick a contact, you try to make the contact actually with people, and then off you go. So I suggest that's actually worth doing.
Thanks very much, John. So going back to Rob's question there, so the question actually, and this was one that was on my list, Rob, so well done for asking, but it was around what to wear for an interview, because bizarrely, I think that it's what you look like, and if you feel the part is very much part of that first interview stage, isn't it? So Rob phrased it in such a way as to say, you know, what should you not wear for an interview, but equally we could say, you know, what should you wear for an interview? So you can go either way with this question. And the first person is Sue.
I've seen this debate a lot on LinkedIn. It's been rumbling around for a long time. And I think it's very much down to the individual employer. Obviously, we have 140 plus sites internationally. And if I was saying to somebody who's going to one of our children's services, I'd say, you know, judge your audience. You go into a service that's going to be working with very damaged children, and they might not want to be wearing a suit for that particular interview, because that may not give the impression of what you are saying about yourself wanting to work with children. But I guess my personal one is still come smart. Is that because I'm older? Is that because that's how I was taught to do it? Is that because I always got jobs because I dressed smartly? I don't know, but that's my personal preference. But I do think as I become the older member of the team, and I've got younger people coming below me that manage services, they might have a different outlook on that. So we have like residential settings for learning disability. Well, that's going to be very informal wear, but I still wouldn't expect you to rock up in torn jeans and, you know, a band t-shirt. It might be who you are, but you're coming for an interview. And I would still expect that level of sort of, I want to get over the person I am, but not by what I'm wearing necessarily. Somebody might completely disagree with me, so it doesn't really matter what you come in, it's personality, and I totally agree with that as well. And it's a tough line to get the personality out of what they're wearing. And my generation, as old as I am, it is still smart wear, and it would still count. But I work with people that have turned up to interviews in torn jeans, and I've still given them the role because it was the personality that shone through. So it's a difficult one, I think. It is an individual person. I don't think you can say it's this or nothing, or it's that and that. It just depends on you. It depends on this, where you work. It depends what you're portraying. If you're a hip bar and you want hip people to work for you, you might not want to see them in the suit. You might want to see, well, how do they express themselves in and what they wear? You know, it might be completely different to what I need in hospital settings. If I'm interviewing a hospital manager, I expect a suit. If I'm interviewing a support worker, I might not expect that. They might not be able to afford that. So do I judge them on their attire? You know, that's a difficult one. And I know it's been rumbling for ages on LinkedIn, and I don't think there is a right answer to that, Rob, actually. I think it is very, very dependent on so many factors. It's a tough one. As long as they come in some clothes, I guess I'd be grateful. Unless you run a nudist colony, then maybe it wouldn't matter.
Well, it's an interesting point there, Sue, and I think so. What I'm going to take away from that, for our graduates, is that sometimes it just depends on the role. It depends on the role that you're going for, and it also depends on how much you want to show your personality at the interview. But one thing that I think has come through is that there is a certain level of care that needs to be taken with your appearance. So having clean clothes and smelling nice is probably like the minimum standard. But then after that, it's very much around the context of the job. So, Mandy.
Yeah, very similar to Sue, really. Probably a bit old school, but as long as people are tidy, smart, because it shows that, you know, they take a pride in themselves. You want them to take a pride in working for your business. Clean, you know, tidy hair. I think all of those basics really are so important for us. And then it's what is appropriate for the role. You know, it doesn't have to be the three-piece suit, but just to be smart, as Sue mentioned that word, you know, and I know everybody's got a different perception of what smart might look like, but I also think people will realise when they're not quite making the full effort. You know, this is your impression, and as Tom said, in the first, you know, few seconds of meeting somebody, you're going to make that impression. And it could be that you're coming in your ripped jeans and your t-shirt or something, which isn't appropriate for the office job that you're going for. And that is going to make an impact, although, you know, you will have the questions and you will be looking at that person's skills. You'll also have that little doubt in your mind about them if they haven't really thought about their impression to you that day.
Yeah, thanks, Mandy. It's a little bit like when we were talking about the applications, wasn't it? And those first impressions, you know, have people cared about what they've done? And sometimes it doesn't matter too much what style that care comes across in, but it is about that effort that's being put into it, isn't it? So yeah, thanks very much for that. The next person is John.
Probably feel the obvious answer. I think you've got to dress to the role, to the expectation. You know, if you're coming into a job where you'll be expected to wear a uniform, then you have to show from the interview that you can understand how to wear a uniform. So you have to show your dress that fits into that. You know, if someone turned up for interview in any of our roles in a t-shirt and sort of ripped jeans, they wouldn't get very far, unfortunately, because what they're not doing is showing the ability to be smart. But I do get the point. If you're in a funky bar and you want people in jeans and a t-shirt, then that's probably really appropriate. So I don't believe there's a stereotype. I think you should dress for the role.
Fabulous. Thanks for that confirmation there, John. Really good. Tom.
Yeah, it's just about, I would say, professionalism and pride. I'd rather be overdressed than underdressed, in the same way as I'd rather be early than late. I think I worked for an urban lifestyle, or fancy sounding sort of pool place before, and I turned up in a suit, and I think they felt I'd overdressed, but at the same time, I can dial it back. I can't. It's more difficult to sort of dress up than it is to dress down. So I'd always advise them to make an effort and wear something they feel comfortable in, but something that looks the part. I suppose the only advice I'd give people is, if you're going to wear a tie, wear it properly. I'd rather someone not wear a tie than have a knot somewhere down here, but no, that's just me.
Can I just jump in as well? For one of my pet hates around people going for interviews, do not chew gum during an interview. There is nothing more off-putting than somebody chewing while they're trying to talk to you, and you get mesmerised by the thing going around in the mouth and not listening to what anybody's saying to you. And I have actually turned very, very good candidates down for turning up chewing gum based on the fact they were chewing their gum, and that was it. And I know from my experience with the Open University, when I've interviewed with them, they've done the same. We're in the same interview. I went, nope. So it's even down to that. You know, think about how you're portraying yourself to other people. What you do in your social life and how you speak to your friends and your family is different when you're going for a job interview. And that is just one thing that I really don't like at all. And I chew gum. I'm not going to think about gum. I'm not anti-gum, but I don't like it in an interview.
I think people need to just bear in mind what the word interview means. You know, it means it's an opportunity for you to show yourself in your best light. So it's an interview, you know, it's an opportunity for you to wear whatever you wear. It should be the best actually of what you have. It should be the best pair of shoes. It should be the best shirt, the best blouse, best pair of jeans. It should be your best one, not just anyone. Because if you don't show the effort, then the person interviewing you is not going to see the effort. And if you don't see the effort, then they're just not going to employ you.
Yeah, good points. Good points. Tom, do you have another one there? Was your hand up from last time?
I think my hand's still up, to be honest.
Okay, not a problem. So another favourite saying of the year is called legacy hand. And I think we've got Mark Godwin.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you. I'm just downstairs. I had to go and find a room, so I'm hiding on the first floor of Moss House. So it's been great to listen to everyone. One thing I just want to ask is how much do you go and look at your candidates' social media? So we've talked about their first impression by how good they are in a suit, whether I believe that's an ill-fitting suit or the shoes aren't polished might be a separate issue. But how many of you, if you've shortlisted to a small number, how many of you actually go and look at their social media outlook and then make a further decision or some kind of background check on a bit of due diligence on their sort of LinkedIn profile or their Facebook site or whatever?
Sue.
I would say I've never looked, if I'm honest, who they are in work, as I am in work, as I am at home, at two different people. I'm lively, loud and vivacious at work. I'm a miserable old whatsit at home. So it doesn't mean that my Facebook page will say who I am. And if you looked at my Facebook page, you'd find a load of comedy and very little about me whatsoever. LinkedIn probably might have if I know them through that, but on the whole, I don't look. I don't see the relevance. I'm not seeing somebody in their home life. I'm judging them on how they are at work, because we, on the whole, do take certainly for apprenticeships, we take internal staff. So
I think how many people it catches out by what they've posted. Oh, yeah. You only have to look at footballers or cricket recently to find out that you might get caught out for something that you might have retweeted or posted when you were young and
I think nurses particularly have to be very careful, because of the NMC does judge you by your conduct inside and outside of work. But I think that's a different conversation. I think it is the trend. Absolutely, people are doing it more and more, and people maybe not in my position would be checking more and more. But I really don't like doing that. I think it's making an assumption of something that's actually nothing to do with work, and that's very unfair. That's my personal opinion. But I'm not saying that my company doesn't do it. They may or may not do it in the recruitment team. But yes, it does come back to haunt people, absolutely, for all the wrong reasons. As we've seen with the likes of Chrissy Teigen, who's written some awful things when she was young and silly, and now is really getting the backlash of that. Celebrity status being taken away because of what she wrote years ago. And I think it's important that candidates understand that now. And it's perhaps something they need to talk about in university, that these things can come back and bite you. But I wouldn't say that all employers take that stance necessarily.
Thanks very much, Sue. John?
I agree. I mean, I think people, I think the guidance I'd give to people is that they should sort of live their life, but it's the over, seeing someone in a Facebook profile who's drunk and dancing around and whatever, it's not particularly an issue. It shows that they have a life. But if they have, anti-fascist views or actually whatever that they have posted, then yes, that's a risk, because actually you'll be judged on that. And unfortunately, probably, in this day and age, people will tell you they've judged you, they just actually won't employ you. So my advice to people is that if you do unfortunately have those views, then keep them to yourself. I think from a business point of view, people tend to look on people's LinkedIn, and I think that when you go and particularly, it depends upon the level, but if you go and look on someone's LinkedIn and there's no photograph, there's no detail behind it, and the other person that you're interviewing has all that detail, that's actually more important, because it's a professional view of you, whereas Facebook and Twitter and Instagram is a personal view, but your professional view is key. But I think lots of employers are happy to judge the person off the interview, and then if you do have questions, you do your own actual psychometric testing and whatever. But I do think that it'd be naive not to teach people about the detrimental impact of negative social media.
Yeah, I think we do a good job of looking at people's digital footprint, to be fair, but if you've done it, haven't you? And that's the problem, that once it's already done, it's there for life, and you can't get rid of that type of stuff. And obviously things like health and social care, if you're an anti-vaxxer and it's going to become law that you need to be vaccinated, and you've spent the last 14 months saying how much you despise, and you're not going to get a vaccine, you're probably not going to work in that industry, are you?
Well, you just see what's happened on, the NMC have struck that person off, haven't they? It's all over the Nursing Times at the moment that that nurse that was saying it's all a hoax and anti-vaccine has now been struck up as not fit to practice. So yes, it most does bite you on the bum, sadly, but you know, if you feel strong enough to put them out there in the first place, then you are going to take the consequences, aren't you? And it will filter back to your employer. It always does. People are always nosy. But whether that's perceived as relevant is another thing. You know, obviously that was most relevant for nursing, but it, you know, would it be relevant to somebody else? I don't know. But yeah, I think LinkedIn's definitely the way forward. You know, I do. I don't look at people's profiles because I know you've done it most of the time, and I can't be doing with being private. I'm a very open person. If I'm looking, I'll tell you. But I think, you know, there is opportunities for people to be checked out on LinkedIn and confirm CV history, because there could be some anomalies there, and you might think, hang on, that's different to that. You know, so I think that may be an important point. But if you're putting it out there, it's out there for everybody to see anyway. So, you know, why would you leave yourself so at risk?
Thank you. We've got some more hands up that have gone up in the meantime, and so just keen to get everybody else in. Tom, I think your hand's been up for a while.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I mean, it sounds very simplistic, but if it doesn't look good written down, don't write it down. As a really simple rule of thumb. And my wife's a primary school teacher, and one of the things that they're quite keen on is obviously people have social media and there's pictures of my wife, you know, where she's gone out and she's had fun, but her middle name's in there, or the teacher's surnames aren't on there. It makes it a little more difficult for people to find. So again, don't post it if it shouldn't be posted. But equally, maybe the guys don't need to, you know, could put the name on it to make them a little more. So we talk friends and family rather than going into the professional thing. If you have the same name on LinkedIn as you do on your Facebook, it's very easy to find someone. So I'm not telling them to be covert too much, but maybe think about what they're doing and how they're doing it. Yeah,
good point. Absolutely. Mandy.
Yeah, I've not looked back at people's profiles from their history. However, I have dealt with a number of incidents with staff that are, you know, that would have been currently working for me, because the issue can be that if you put in your profile that you work at a particular organisation, and then, you know, you're posting something, you could be then putting your, you know, the company, the reputation at risk. So I have had to deal with that, and with some quite senior people as well, because as Tom's just said, it's very easy to find people online, and then if something's being shared amongst other staff members as well, you know, that is not going to go down well. So just don't do it, and just be really careful, because as you know, Mark's just said, digital footprint, it's there. So for me, I haven't looked back, but once you're employed by me, you know, if you do something and it's there, then, you know, it's likely that it will be found and it will need to be addressed. So just, yeah, be very mindful of what you're doing.
Fabulous. Thanks so much for all your answers there about social media. It is definitely something which is a topic of conversation with all of our students at various points, and different coaching. And so we have some modules that are called, well, very much around, you know, designing your own personality online, and it's almost like a branding project that the students do about themselves, and they learn about the different scales, if you like, of social media, from LinkedIn through Twitter to Facebook, becoming more and more personal about yourselves, but also that awareness of what should be public and what should be private. Tom, I think your hand went up again. Oh no, not so much. Okay.
Yeah. It's the legacy hand, unfortunately. Which is
No
the phrase
problem.
I've learned today.
It's a new phrase. Oh, we've all learned something today, definitely. And is yours the same, John, or have you got another point there? Oh, you're on silent there, John.
Beautiful, John, you're on mute. I think that there's the flip side to it as well is that the vast majority of people that are getting in trouble because of stuff they've posted are because you haven't told anyone about it. They've been found out. And I think there's a lot of conversations there that say, if you've got a really staunch opinion on something and it's something that you really believe in, I don't believe you should hide from it, but you also shouldn't keep it as your secret either. You know, actually inclusive, you know, we're completely actually inclusive, and if someone has a specific view, but ultimately you might actually have to realize that if you have a really strong view on something, you may not be able to work in certain places, and don't put a round peg in a square hole. So common sense is fairly clear, but don't actually hide from it. would be my view.
Thanks very much for that, John, and we'll have that as our concluding comment there. But stay on the line. I'm going to stop recording now, just to say to the students that have been with us today, and thank you very much for watching and for joining us, and thank you very much to our panel as well.